The concept of standalone industries is still relevant in the South African marketplace, and companies are still looking at its own markets and their own customers and own suppliers in order to gain value and market share. This has worked well in the past, and companies have remained profitable and competitive. However, if you consider this new concept around open business ecosystems, that is going to dramatically change the way one looks at the landscapes. Cross-industry collaboration is very much about drawing companies together through multiple industries and collectively seeking opportunities where you can create differentiated value propositions to target customer segments which you couldn't really reach before. Even if you consider the connectivity where we're at right now, we're probably at our most advanced stage with regards to connectivity, Internet of Things. And as a result of that, I think companies are going to be very well positioned into the future to actually take and leverage off cross-industry collaboration. However, few are actually taking this leap right now. For me, there's about 4 different areas that I think are going to drive increased collaboration into the future. The first of those areas, I think, is about more and more companies being really focused around cost reduction. So sharing of cost and risk across those companies is going to become very much a necessity for both the private and public companies alike. Secondly, I think companies all grappling with the whole question around data analytics and big data. And I think companies are going to start leveraging off these large pools of data and information that they have available to them. And they're going to start, this is going to bring a rise to these companies linking themselves to new industries and creating new revenue stream opportunities. And thirdly, I think one of the big factors is a lot of small businesses are popping up at the moment. And that's not going to change into the future. And I think scarcity of funding is going to become one of those crucial factors where companies are going to be forced to collaborate just to obtain the capital they need to remain in business. And I think for me, one of the biggest and most differentiating factors is going to be, all companies are going to have to look at their value propositions, and they're going to have to create much stronger value propositions into the future just to compete. And for me, this is going to be one of the biggest drivers towards cross-industry collaboration. If you consider all that as a summary, for me, and I think, all companies across all sectors really need to start thinking about collaboration very carefully to either stay in the game or very fast become disintermediated. I think one of the biggest challenges to cross-industry collaboration right now is to make sure that the governance is in place from the outset and clear from the outset. And what I mean by that in terms of governance is all companies, when they enter into this cross-collaboration debate, need to consider the timelines, need to consider the ownership, and need to consider the remuneration agreements between the partnering companies that exist. Leaders need to look and make sure that they have access and enable access to large information and data, and they need to find innovative and creative ways to leverage off the collective databases of the partnering companies. And this will create compelling and differentiated value propositions. I think at very basic level, and nothing really has changed from the past, but if you look at how you would typically approach any problem, you have to find out what the burning platform is, and you have to have a look at the value proposition that you're creating around that, and it has to be very customer-centric. And if you create the right value stream opportunities and showcase the revenue stream potential across the partnering companies, I think this will definitely be one of those areas where you can actually break those barriers down into the future. Yeah, 100%. I think cross-industry collaboration is definitely changing mindsets is definitely going to be one of the biggest challenging aspects to creating open business ecosystems. Remembering that all companies have different cultures, and even if you're considering changing partnering companies to become part of an open extended ecosystem, this is going to mean a change in culture for each of those partnering companies. The companies are going to need to be forced to think differently into the future about how they look at ownership in terms of their customers, their suppliers, their innovations. And I think companies that go down this path in terms of cross-industry collaboration must definitely consider all these aspects, because without being able to change the culture and the mindsets and enable a creative and a collaborative mindset, you won't be able to actually reach the end potential. Companies are going to have to think about different ways to share the different innovations and solutions and success stories that come out of this. And I think that will enable companies to believe in cross-industry collaboration, and it will end up changing the mindsets. Supply chain companies are already looking at opportunities around shared value, and we're already seeing supply chain companies acting and coming up with smart partnerships and innovating in the space. If you look at supply chain companies, they largely have very much commoditized service offerings, and new business is largely comparable on price. And if you stand back and actually consider the end-to-end control that supply chain companies have over the end-to-end value chain, even considering this aspect of over-commoditized service offerings, you can't help but see the vast array of opportunities that exist both upstream and downstream in the supply chains, even considering products or raw materials that are used by manufacturers all the way through to the end consumer, and the recyclable elements to those products all the way back through to the manufacturer. I think there's going to be definitely a huge opportunity or huge amount of opportunities for supply chain companies into the future. And saying that, I think there's a huge amount of opportunities for not just supply chain companies, but all companies across all industries. And I think the biggest factor around this is companies need to make it their business to understand their customers and their suppliers' businesses, to be able to identify opportunities, to be able to engage and expand on the service offerings and value propositions that each of those companies provide.